Hello, good morning. So we're going to continue on talking about cells. So we're going to talk about the cell cycle. So most of the time cells carry out their regular function, but everything changes when a cell gets the signal to divide. At that point, the cell must accomplish several tasks to be ready for the big division into two daughter cells. First, the cell must grow in size and double its contents. This phase is called interphase. Next, the cell must divide up its contents so two daughter cells will have roughly equal contents. This second phase is called mitosis, and it has several stages. Finally, the cell's cytoplasm physically divides into a phase called cytokinesis. The regular sequence of events in which the cell grows, prepares for division, and divides to form these two daughter cells is known as the cell cycle. After the division is complete, each of the daughter cells begins the cycle again. So the first stage is called interphase. So the first stage of the cell cycle is interphase before cell division begins. During interphase, the cell grows, makes a copy of its DNA, and prepares to divide into two cells. So make sure you understand that interphase is the first stage of the cell cycle, but the cell cycle necessarily does not include the interphase. It's actually the first stage in mitosis is prophase. So we'll talk about that either way. So early in interphase, the cell grows into its full size and produces the organelles that both daughter cells will need. For example, plant cells make more chloroplasts. All kinds of cells make ribosomes and mitochondria. Cells also make more enzymes, substances that speed up chemical reactions in living things. Recall that chromatin in the nucleus holds all the genetic information that a cell needs to carry out its functions. That information is a complex chemical substance called deoxyribonucleic acid, also called DNA. In a process called replication, the cell makes a copy of the DNA in its nucleus before cell division. DNA replication results in the formation of thread-like structures called chromosomes. Each chromosome divides the nucleus of the cell, contains two identical sets of DNA called chromatids. So the cell is going to be thus preparing for this division. So once the DNA has replicated, preparation for cell division begins. The cell produces structures that will help it to divide into two new cells. In animal cells, but not plant cells, a pair of centrioles is duplicated. These centrioles help later when dividing the DNA between the daughter cells. At the end of interphase, the cell is ready to divide. So I just want to make sure that we all understand, though, that plants and animals have cells. Okay, most of you guys I see in our lesson checks and things like that, we're always talking about cells inside animals and organisms. Make sure you understand that cells are both in plants and animals. Actually, it's anything that's living is going to have cells. Okay. Stage 2. Stage 1, remember that we're having these centrioles, as I just said. Centrioles only appear in animal cells. Is these two little things right here. These two things are going to be pulling these chromatids apart, and these chromatids are going to be making up, they're going to be half and half on each of these daughter cells. Mitosis. Once interphase ends, the second stage of the cell cycle begins. So during mitosis, the cell's nucleus is going to divide into two nuclei. Scientists divide mitosis into 4 specific parts, though. They're going to be called prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So during prophase, DNA is going to be condensing into separate chromosomes. Recall that during replication, chromosomes have formed. The two chromatids that make up the chromosomes are exact copies of identical DNA. The nuclear membrane that surrounds the identical DNA begin to break apart. So in metaphase, which is that second part of mitosis, the chromosomes line up along the center of the cell. Chromatids that will go into each daughter cell are lined up on that side of the cell. Next, we're going to have that anaphase. And anaphase, fibers are going to be connected to the centrioles that are going to be pulling on each side of the cell. Then we have telophase, And then during telophase, the chromatids are going to be pulled to opposite ends of the cell, so the nuclear membrane is going to be reforming that DNA to create these two identical nuclei. So each nucleus contains a complete identical copy of DNA. So remember, we have this cell. Okay, so when they're going on these opposite sides of the cell, that is going to be called anaphase. They're going to be pulled by these centrioles, like we just said. Remember, centrioles only appear in animal cells. Plant cells do not have centrioles. They're going to be pulling on these two sides. Now, when they get to these two sides, then we can enter this telophase, which is one of the last parts in mitosis. So this telophase is going to be making these two nuclear envelopes, these two nuclei appear. So it's going to have this membrane bound around these chromosomes where the DNA is. So they're going to be pulling on opposite sides, and eventually they're going to be splitting through a process called cytokinesis, which is the next stage. So in the final stage of the cell cycle, we have cytokinesis. This stage completes the process of cell division. During cytokinesis, the cell's cytoplasm is going to divide, distributing the organelles into each of the two new daughter cells. Cytokinesis usually starts at about the same time as telophase. When cytokinesis is complete, each daughter cell has the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. Next, each cell enters interphase and the cell cycle begins again. During cytokinesis in animal cells, the cell membrane squeezes together around the middle of the cell. Cytoplasm pinches into two cells. Each daughter cell gets about half of the organelles for the parent cell. Cytokinesis is somewhat different in plant cells. A plant cell's rigid cell wall cannot squeeze together in the same way that a cell membrane can. Instead, a structure called a cell plate forms across the middle of the cell. The cell plate begins to form new cell membranes between the two daughter cells. New cell walls then form around the cell membrane. So remember, for example, we see up here, this is this animal cell. In this animal cell, we have this, it's called a cleavage furrow. And in this cleavage furrow, we're going to have these splitting apart. So there's going to be these two new daughter cells. All right, so also remember that we have this animal cell and plant cell. So in this plant cell, we're going to have this cell plate form, but in this animal cell, we're going to have, just like we had here, this cleavage furrow, and it's going to divide in this cytokinesis phase, and it's going to create these two different cells. Same thing in a plant cell, it's going to create these two cells, but they're going to still have pretty much be joined by this cell plate. All right, so if you do have your textbook, we are on 385, but if you don't worry about it. So we're going to continue on a little bit about systems working together. So all the systems in the human body work together to perform all the necessary functions for life. So cells are going to be needing this oxygen provided by the respiratory system that carried out the circulatory system. So organs carry out commands from the nervous systems, and every part of the body changes its activities based on signals from the endocrine system. Movement, for example, occurs through an interaction between the skeletal, muscular, and nervous systems that make it possible. So skeletal muscles are attached to the bones of a skeleton and provide the force that moves these bones. So muscles contract and relax. When a muscle contracts, it shortens and pulls on the bones to which it is attached. Try standing on the one leg and bending the other leg at the knee. Hold that position. You can feel that you're using the muscles at the back of your thigh. Your nervous system controls when and how your muscles act on your bones. The nervous system has two ways of controlling body functions: electrical signals from nerves and chemical signals from the endocrine system. Both methods help you respond to our environment. So remember, our electrical signals are coming from our nerves. So it's going to be including our spinal cord, traveling all the way, and is going to be controlled by our brain. Chemical signals come from the endocrine system. Some chemical signals also include hormones and things like that. They're going to make us let's say some chemical signals are going to make us hungry. Some of them are going to make us full. Some of them are going to make us thirsty, things like that. They're going to allow you to interact with our environment. So all cells need oxygen and nutrients, and they need to get rid of carbon dioxide and other waste. But most cells are locked into position with no way to move and search for food. So how can you stay alive? The answer is that blood cells in the circulatory system carry nutrients to and away from the cells in the body. Blood vessels divide into smaller and smaller branches until its tiniest, called capillaries, are only as wide as one blood cell. Capillaries pass near every cell in the body. Blood picks up oxygen from the lungs and food molecules from the intestines and delivers them to needy cells. At the same time, blood collects carbon dioxide and waste from the cells. The carbon dioxide is returned to the lungs to be released into the air. Waste products are filtered from the body to the kidneys in the excretory system and passed out of the body in urine. So this is just one example of transporting materials. So remember these blood cells, right? These are red blood cells. These red blood cells are going to be picking up this oxygen and things like that. In order for the oxygen to be delivered to other muscle groups that need oxygen to work, to function. So without oxygen in our body, then eventually we're going to die, our cells would die, organism failure would occur, and big issues, right? So now also remember that when we inhale, we're going to be inhaling oxygen, okay? So our oxygen is going to be being pumped into our bloodstream, into our body. Then we're going to be exhaling this carbon dioxide. Remember, carbon dioxide is very needed by plants. So that is just a cycle that we live. Remember, our plants are taking in that carbon dioxide, they're releasing that oxygen back to us. Waste products are also filtered by the blood through the kidneys, and the kidneys are going to be creating this urine. So this urine is going to be produced in this bladder. The bladder is going to be holding all the urine together, and until it is full, our body is going to signal that our bladder is full, and we are going to go to the bathroom and release all of the urine. Your eyes, ears, skin, nose, and taste buds also all send information about the environment to your nervous system. Your senses are going to allow you to react to loud noises, hot objects, and the odor of your favorite food. Any change or signal in the environment that can make an organism react in some way is called a stimulus. A response is an action or change in behavior that occurs as a result of a stimulus. Responses are directed by your nervous system, but often involve other body systems as well. Your muscular and skeletal systems help you reach for food, and your digestive system releases saliva before the food even touches your mouth. So remember, so we have a stimulus and then we have a response. So for example, our stimulus, let's say we're a dog, right? We're looking at the stimulus of this pizza, right? Our owner's eating pizza. So we have this receptor. So our receptor is what part of the body is going to be taking in this message. So we have a dog's nose. So they are able to sniff and smell the stimulus, let's say that's on the table or that's far away. They're going to have this receptor take in the information, is going to go into the brain so we can decide what is going to happen with it after. So we have this control center, this brain. Then we're going to have our effect or our response. So in response to this original stimulus, this smell of this food, we are going to salivate. So a dog is going to start salivating. So saliva is going to be produced. So we start making these fluids in our mouth, right? This response that we're gonna have, because we think, or as a dog, we think that we're gonna always get fed when we have this stimulus. Hormones also play a crucial role in our body. So the endocrine system uses chemical signals instead of nerves to control body functions. So the endocrine system is made up of many glands, organs that produce and release chemicals either through tiny tubes called ducts or directly into the bloodstream. So for example, when something startles you, your adrenal glands send signals that prepare you to flight or run away. Your heart pumps faster, your lungs let in more air, and your ability to feel pain decreases. The pupils of your eyes even grow larger and allow in more light, so you're ready for action. The chemical produced by the endocrine gland is called a hormone. Hormones are carried through your body by the circulatory system. These chemicals affect many body processes. One hormone interacts with the excretory system and the circulatory system to control the amount of water in the bloodstream. Another hormone interacts with the digestive system and the circulatory system to control the amount of sugar in the bloodstream. Hormones can also affect the reproductive system on both males and females, especially during puberty. So we have this hormone control. We have testosterone that is specifically mostly for males, and then we have estrogen specifically for females. Now, both males and females do contain both. It's just that girls have a larger amount of estrogen while men have higher levels of testosterone and so forth. So I'm actually going to pause here for today. Make sure that you're taking good notes because these notes are going to help you for lesson checks in the future. Thank you.